Welcome to this week's yoga session. Today we'll focus on a technique I call denying the status quo. One of the biggest problems we have in a yoga program where the practice is a little slower, where we focus more on slowing down, stretching, and relaxing, as opposed to the more dynamic vinyasa flows. In the slower yoga, quite often the problem students have is their mind wandering. They disengage from their practice. This happens in other areas, not just in yoga. So denying the status quo is a very simple technique. Every 1 or 2 breaths, every 3 or 4 breaths, depending on what works for you, you change something. Okay? Even if you like where you are, you change something. And for instance, if you're in a stretch, you could make the change horizontal. In other words, try to shift in such a way that the intensity stays the same, but it moves into a slightly different area. So you move the sensation through the muscle a little bit. And in another way to do it would be to focus on the intensity, to maintain the sensation of stretching in the same part of the muscle, but every 2 or 3 breaths decide to either back off a little bit or go deeper. Now, this forces you to do several things, all of which are good. In order to decide whether or not to push deeper or to back off, you have to pay attention to what's going on. Then you've got to decide, is this too easy or too intense? And then you've got to choose the right direction to go in. And if you do that every breath, every 2 breaths, every 3 breaths, rather than just checking out and zoning out, it keeps you present in the moment. Not only that, you begin to really look much deeper into your soma, into that world of sensations. It requires you to pay attention to make that decision. How does it feel? And what do I need to do? And if you aren't sure, you guess. And if you think it's perfect as it is, that's where the key comes in. You still adjust, either push deeper or back off. Take your best guess. And then if that is the wrong direction, try the opposite direction. After a breath or 2, once again, decide. Push in, back off. Or if you're going horizontal, shift a little left, shift a little right. Take a breath or 2, notice how it's feeling, and then shift again. So let's get started. Take a moment to set up your posture. Draw the flesh out from under the sit bones. Reach the sit bones back, tilt the pelvis forward. And then lifting first through the waist and the sternum, then the chest and back, and then the collarbones floating up, and then broadening out through the shoulder girdle as if you were a swimmer. Releasing the shoulder blades, keeping the heart open. Now, if you tightened or tensed up to make any of those adjustments, ease up just enough that there's a softening without collapsing. Allow the eyelids to close gently without squeezing or trapping tension. Soften the space behind the eyeballs, the jaws, the lips, the tongue, the mouth. Slow down the breath slightly, stretching the exhalation. And very delicately begin to float your head around a little to the left or to the right. Find an interesting position. Back away until it almost disappears. And then relax into it. Now try and find just the right amount of sensation, not intense, just a very delicate, pleasant, gentle sensation, and we'll go horizontal. Every breath or 2, move your head a little to the left or a little to the right, so the intensity remains the same, but you feel it in a slightly different area of the neck. Or you could lift your chin slightly or lower the chin slightly, or you could adjust the shoulder blade slightly. So that after every breath or two, you're changing something. And then noticing, is this an improvement? And then learning from what you just did and how the body responded to what you did and making another decision. Just feeling your way around gently. Take a few breaths and then switch sides. Keep relaxing your face, especially the eyes, the jaws, the lips, and the tongue. Slowly float your head upright to neutral. Notice how it feels, and then going to the opposite side. Repeat the same process. Establish a subtle, delicate stretching sensation. And then explore horizontally, keeping the intensity of the sensation the same, but moving the sensation around and through the fascia and the muscles. All the time, remembering to relax the face. Stretching the exhale slightly into a sigh. 2 or 3 breaths on the second side. Coming back to center. And then tracing an infinity sign with the tip of your nose. Slowly at first. And then focus on doing it in a way that helps the neck relax. Reverse directions. Roll out the shoulders. And then opening into a twist, leading with the right shoulder. Lift the right shoulder. Draw the shoulder blade around, draw the shoulder blade down and lift the chest up and rotate. Cross the left hand over to the right knee. Now lift, expand, rotate just a little bit, and then focus on breathing deeply. Two or three more complete breaths. Breathe into the abdomen, the low back, mid back, upper back, the chest, and the collarbones, in that order. One more breath. Coming back to center. Leading with the left shoulder, lift the shoulder, draw the shoulder blade around and down, lift the chest forward and up, rotate, turning to your left, broaden, expand, and breathing into that with a deep, complete breath. One more breath. Coming back to center, circling with the ribs. and reversing, and then rolling out the shoulders and the shoulder blades. And coming back to center. Now introducing a side stretch. Take your right fingertips to the floor. Float the left arm overhead. And then lengthen the spine. Lift through the waist, through the sternum, through the chest, through the collarbones, lengthening the spine. Take that left shoulder, and from the inner armpit, or even better from the left shoulder blade, the inner edge of the left shoulder blade, if you are conscious of that area, draw back. And take your chest forward. Flare the ribs. And then without losing that expansiveness, broadening through the shoulder girdle, without losing that, walk your right hand away just a little bit. And then push with the right hand to anchor the left sit bone. So the left sit bone is rooted, grounded, connected to the earth. And then adjusting to where it feels healthy. Take a breath or two. Keep taking your chest forward and up. Keep taking the inner armpit or the inner edge of the shoulder blade back and down. One more breath. Come back to center. Take your left fingers to the floor. Float the right arm. Lift through the waist, sternum, chest, collarbones. Broaden through the shoulder girdle. Flare the ribs. Chest forward and up. And the inner armpit or the inner edge of the right shoulder blade draws back and down. Walk the left hand away just enough to make it interesting. Pushing with your left hand just enough to keep the right sit bone rooted. Couple more breaths. Coming back to center, circle with the ribs. And reverse. And then roll out the shoulders independently. And then together. Working next with a leg stretch, starting in Dandasana. Reach the sit bones back, tilt the pelvis forward. Now for a lot of people the hamstrings are going to be too tight for this pose to really work well, and so if you are angled back slightly and then rounding the back a little bit because of tight hamstrings, bend your knees enough that you can rotate the pelvis forward and then lengthen up and lift up and broaden through the shoulders. Now we can use the same idea of denying the status quo in terms of how much effort we're putting into a pose. Now, if you can straighten the legs comfortably while maintaining the alignment and expansiveness and extension in the back, that's fine. If you have to choose though, keep the knees bent and really lift and expand through the back. Now on a scale of 1 to 10, find a 1. So you just kind of relax into it, you'll settle a little bit, but you don't quite collapse. Then go to 0. 0, you just kind of collapse into the pose. And then go to 1, where you're putting forth just a tiny bit of effort and you just float a little bit taller, broader, more open. Now go to a 5, 50% intensity. Bring the belly forward, lift the chest up, roll the shoulders back and down. Remember, if you're already struggling, you're at an 8 or a 9, not a 5. Now, after every breath, decide whether to work a little harder or to ease up a little and not work quite so hard. And then take another breath and then either work a little harder or ease up a little bit. And then take another breath and make another decision. 5 or 10 more breaths. Keep the breath smooth and steady. Two or three more breaths. You'll have a chance to rest after this. So if you want to work through a little bit of energy, use this last couple of breaths to lean into the effort. And then relaxing into a forward bend. Now once again, the legs can remain straight, or we can bend the knees a little bit. If you bend the knees, try not to flop them out to the side, although that's okay. But for today, try to keep your knees in closer together, and you can use your hands to support. For those of you with more length in the hamstrings, you can extend through the heels. Now back away until you still have a stretch in the back of the legs, but on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 1. Breathe. Relax. And then decide whether to push to a 2 or to back off to 0. Take another breath. And then once again, adjusting. If you start to feel any sensation in the back of the knees, bend the knees more. Keep bending the knees until all the sensation moves into the belly of the muscle, not the fascia behind the knee. 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 more breaths. Remember, after every breath, notice how you're feeling and then decide whether to push deeper or back off. The better it feels, the smaller the adjustment you'll want to make. If it's almost perfect, or if you think it is perfect, don't make a big adjustment. Just a small one, just to test whether it really was perfect or not. No matter how perfect you may think it is, change. That's where the term denying the status quo comes from. Even when you think it's good, see if you can make it better. Even when you think it's perfect, deny that. Deny the idea that it is perfect. The only reason it's perfect is you aren't paying enough attention. If you were, you would notice that backing off or going just a little deeper would be even better. This forces you to pay more attention to make those decisions and to notice the difference. Couple more breaths. Easing up. Now we'll do a stretch for the quadricep. Lean to your right. Take the left leg back. Bring the heel in close to your hip. Now for a lot of people that ankle is not going to be happy, so you can always roll up a blanket and put it underneath the bottom of the shin to take some of the weight off of the top of the foot. Now, if this is a little intense, lift your left hip forward and away from the heel. And just lean away. On the other hand, if it feels okay, begin to shift your weight to the left and let that left hip sink a little. If it gets too easy, work your way back onto your right elbow. If that's too easy, your right shoulder. That's too easy, lay flat. Take a breath, and then decide whether to push a little deeper or to back off. And then take another slow, deep breath. In this pose, dropping the exhale can help relax the muscle. So take a deep breath and drop the exhale. And as you drop the exhale, drop the resistance in the muscle itself. Five or 10 more breaths. This is an important muscle group to stretch, but it takes some time for it to relax and open. Three or four breaths. Release, lean to the right, let the hip come up slightly, and then release the leg. Coming back to Dandasana. And we'll take another round in Dandasana to work. Reach the sit bones back, tilt the pelvis forward. Bend the knees if you need to, hands rest on the floor, close to the hips, and then lift, draw in through the navel, lift up through the chest. Roll the shoulders back and down. Now take your chest forward and up. Pull the navel in. Take the shoulders back and down. 5 or 10 breaths. After each breath, decide whether to ease up or to work a little bit harder. And then take another breath and make another decision. Three or four more breaths. One more breath. And then lean to the left. Take the right leg back behind you. Bring the heel in close. Again, support with a rolled up blanket underneath the base of your shin if you aren't comfortable. Now before you go into this pose deeply, take a moment and remember how it felt on the first side, and if it was boring or pleasant, then you were doing good. If it was unpleasant, you have only yourself to blame. Back off. Don't try so hard. Settle for being a little bored rather than uncomfortable. Breathe deep. Make use of each and every exhalation to relax more deeply. If it's a choice between being uncomfortable or being a little bored, choose bored. And after each exhale, decide whether to ease up a little or a lot, or push in a little bit. making good use of every exhalation, not wasting a single breath. 5 or 6 or 7 more breaths on the second side. Measure progress not by how far you push into the pose, but how much you enjoy the actual experience of practicing. Couple more breaths. Roll your weight a little to the left, release the leg, and then laying back, hug your knees, rock side to side. Take a few breaths. Give the low back a chance to decompress. And then coming up onto your hands and knees for cat-cow. Starting from table, hands shoulder width, knees hip width. Spread the fingers wide, middle finger pointing straight ahead. Lift the tailbone, drop the belly, open the chest, look up, finish breathing in. Tuck the tailbone, haul around the low back, mid back, upper back, tuck the chin, exhale. Continue on your own. Improvising, reposition one hand or both hands. Then just feeling your way around without thinking. But keep changing things up. Don't get stuck in one pattern. As we grow older, this is one of the great enemies as we age, and that is getting stuck in a rut. The longer you spend in the rut, the deeper it gets. So you can use your yoga as a metaphor for how you live the rest of your life. 3 or 4 more breaths. Back to center, a couple more cat-cows just to restore symmetry. And back to neutral. Now coming upright for camel. Twisted camel. Quarter turn to your left. Take your left hand, place it on the sacrum, on the thigh, or on the heel. Float the right arm up. Take your chest forward and up, and take the inner armpit or the shoulder blade, the right shoulder blade back and down. Take the hips forward, lift the chest up. Take a breath or two. Coming up, quarter turn to the right. Right hand on the sacrum, thigh or heel, float the left arm. chest forward and up. Draw that right shoulder blade in and down the spine. And the right shoulder from the shoulder blade or the inner armpit draw back and down as the chest moves forward and up. Out, back to cat-cow. And then coming to neutral. Tuck the toes, walk the hands in close to the knees, lift the knees, walk your hands in, and either place your hands on your thighs, coming up a little higher, or hang into a deeper stretch if it feels good. Both knees bent slightly. And those of you who have some stretching behind the knee, bend the knees even more. Sink the belly, lift the tailbone. Either stay here or walk your hands down and hang. Now, going side to side, bend the left knee more, straighten the right leg just a little bit, not all the way. Then bend the right knee, partially straighten the left, and come back to center. Now, denying the status quo can also be applied to rhythm. So, as you go from one side to the other, after every breath or two, either slow down that movement or speed it up a little. When you think the rhythm is perfect, then speed up or slow down ever so slightly. And then after a breath or two, again decide whether it would feel better to speed up or slow down. And then balance the stretch evenly. Now apply the status quo to the intensity. After every breath, either increase the intensity of the stretch or decrease. Do that by rotating the pelvis, lifting the tailbone, sinking the belly, more or less. Now apply the same principle to where you're feeling the stretch. Bend the left knee significantly, enough that there's no stretch in the left leg. And then on the right leg, create a stretch by lifting the tailbone, sinking the belly. And then either straighten the right leg a little more or a little less. So you maintain the stretch in the right leg the whole time. But as you straighten the leg, the stretch will move down closer to the knee. And as you bend the knee and lift the tailbone more strongly, the stretch will move up higher, closer to the sit bone, to the pelvis. So create a stretch, take a breath, and then decide whether to straighten or bend the knee a little more. And then take another breath or two, and then adjust. Just staying on one side, moving the stretch up and down the back of the leg. Couple more breaths. Switch sides. Bend the right knee significantly, partially straighten the left. And after every breath or two, shift the stretch a little higher, a little lower by bending or straightening the left knee. 2 or 3 more breaths on the second side. Come back to center, and then as you roll up, buckle the knees, slip the hips under you as you're rolling up. Roll out the shoulders. Mini Yoga Sun Salutation. Stand with your feet hip width, outer edges parallel, spread the toes. From prayer position, sweep overhead, breathe in. And then either come down part way, supporting weight with your hands, or if you prefer, drop all the way into your forward bend. Roll up, buckle the knees, slip the hips under you, float the arms overhead as you finish breathing in. Release as you exhale. 5 or 10 repetitions. You can apply this principle to the speed, going a little faster or a little slower. And then trying to decide which felt better, which was the improvement. Couple more repetitions. Hold your next overhead stretch. Add a side stretch. Lift the left heel, flare the right ribs. Lift the right heel, flare the left. Side to side. A little bit of a back bend. And back to neutral. 12-step sun salutation. Making sure you got plenty of space behind you to step back. Bring your hands to prayer position. On an inhale, sweep up. Swan dive on the exhale. Leading with the right foot. Stepping back, deep lunge, holding your breath as you transition to plank. Exhale, bringing your knees, chest, forehead to the floor, and then lifting up into cobra and holding. Press the feet down, shrug the shoulders, lift the shoulders, squeeze the shoulder blades together, draw them down the back, reach the chest forward. Take a breath or two. Downward facing dog. Tuck the toes. Pressing up and back. Spread the toes wide. Reach through the heels. Lift the shins. Draw the chest through towards the feet. Float the shoulder blades away from the feet. Now on your own, after every breath, decide whether to work a little harder or a little less, and then take another breath and then recalibrate. 5 or 10 breaths. Remember, you can always come out and rest at any point and then rejoin us when you get a second wind. Couple more breaths. Step the right foot up. Big lunge. Follow with the left. Overhead stretch. Breathe in. Back to center. Take a deep breath. Release the arms on the exhale. Sweep overhead on the inhale. Swan dive on the exhale. Leading with the left foot. Stepping back into a deep lunge. Hold your breath for just a moment. In plank. Pressing down. Draw through to cobra. 3 or 4 breaths. Downward facing dog. Now this time we can deny status quo by rotating attention. Focus on the left leg for 1 breath. Root through the heel, lift the arch, lift the shin, spread the toes, lift the kneecap, and then bend the left knee, straighten the right leg, and focus on the right leg. Push through the ball of the big toe, lift the arch, reach through the heel, lift the shin, lift the kneecap, lift the quadricep. Go side to side. Then balance both legs and focus on the hands. Root through the knuckle of the index finger and spiral the arms. Hollow the inner armpits, broaden the upper back. Then shift your attention to the back and the core. Pull your chest towards your feet, flip the shoulder blades away, broaden the upper back, hollow the abdomen, lift the tailbone. Take a breath or two. Step the left foot up, big lunge. Right foot following. Overhead stretch. Back to prayer. And then Tadasana. Stepping wide for Trikonasana. And we'll go to the right today. Turn the right foot out 90 degrees. And then rotate the back by lifting the heel, taking it wider, setting it down. Spread the toes on both feet. Reach your hips to the left. Tilt the pelvis. Now for today, we'll focus in on the right leg, which is the anchor of this pose. And try to create a healthy, pleasant stretch in the back of the right leg. If you feel it in the back of the knee, then let that be your variable. Bend the knee a little more, a little less, a little more, a little less with each breath, looking for the perfect angle in terms of where you feel the stretch in the belly of the muscle. If you're feeling it already in the back of the muscle, then focus on going a little deeper or coming up a little bit. Those of you that know how to spiral the leg can focus on spiraling the leg more actively or less actively. Pick any variable. The rhythm of your breathing. Breathing a little slower, a little faster. Pick one variable, and then after every breath, adjust that variable. And if occasionally you want to change and look at a different aspect of the pose, choose a different variable, that's fine. Five or six more breaths. breath or two. And then switching sides. Turn the left foot out, turn the right foot in. Shift your hips to the right, tilt the pelvis. And then again, choose your variable. Whether to bend the knee more or less, whether to tilt the pelvis more or less, or to open the pelvis more or less, or to broaden, or to work harder, or to lean in, or to change your breathing. And if someone asks you what is your variable, you should be able to reply. I'm focused on my breathing. I'm focused on the angle of my knee, or how much spiral I'm introducing. If you can't answer the question without thinking, the question was not foremost in your mind. So choose a variable, bring it to the front of your attention, and after every breath, experiment on that one variable. Now, at some point you may want to choose a different variable. This happens when you realize there's something more important going on, and then it's okay to let go of what you are focused on and shift your attention to something that has become more important to you. 4 or 5 more breaths. Couple more breaths. And coming up and out. Turn the feet pigeon-toed, and then release. Take your hips back a little bit as you release into your forward bend. Support weight with your hands on the legs, or if you can reach the floor comfortably with the hands, that's fine. Now, after every breath, either walk your feet wider or closer together. Then take another deep breath, and then descend, whether to walk wider or to close up a little bit. 5 or 10 breaths practicing this. If you get tired of that variable, you can play with whether you lean forward more or lean back more. Or with bending the knees more or less. Again, you should be very clear at any given moment what it is you're paying attention to. Two or three breaths. Walking your feet in a little bit, coming down to your hands and knees. We'll work next with the back roll. If you have your own roller, you can use that. If you don't, take a blanket, roll it up as firmly as you can. Try to squeeze out all the air as you're rolling it up. The tighter the better. Notice as you roll up your blanket, it gets bigger. If you unroll it, it gets smaller. That allows you to customize to get just the right amount of stretch. Now, if you have your own roller you prefer to work with, that's fine. Start with the roller underneath your upper back, the upper third of the shoulder blades, and then the arms extended or interlaced behind your neck, or you can take the arms out to either side. After a breath or two, lift the hips, push yourself down the roll of 1 inch, set the hips down, relax again. In each position, you want to be able to relax comfortably. Adjust the size of your roller to make sure that is the case. Every 4 or 5 breaths, reposition. So the roller slowly works its way down past the lower edge of the shoulder blade into the mid and lower thoracic, and eventually into the lumbar, down to the pelvis. In each position, breathing and relaxing. Go for 3 minutes. If you're moving quickly and you've finished already, go back and start over. Take a couple more minutes. Ten or 15 breaths. If you've already finished, go back to a favorite spot. When you're done, lift the hips, remove the roller, hug the knees, rock side to side. And we'll close with pigeon pose and a spinal twist, and then Shavasana. So coming onto your hands and knees for pigeon pose, and if there's something you think you would prefer to work with, feel free to improvise on your own. Pigeon pose, bring the right knee forward. Take the knee, lift it, move it out to the side, set it down, and then start to slide the left leg back. Now, you can move the left leg forward or backward. You can also move it to the left or to the right. And you can also move your upper body to the left or to the right, or come to your elbows. So pick one of those variables, and then after every breath or two, reposition. If you aren't sure, I would use the back leg as your variable.
After every breath or two, even if you like where you are, after a breath or two, reposition the back leg. Move it forward or backward, left or right, and then take a breath or two to decide whether to back off or to go even further. Stretch the exhale into a sigh. Five or six more breaths. Two or three breaths. And switching legs. Bring the left knee forward, take the knee out to the side a little bit, walk the right leg back. Start with a gentle stretch, take a breath or two to rest and relax, and then decide. Repositioning the back leg if you aren't sure what else to do. Moving it forward or back, left or right. Five or 10 more breaths. Two or three breaths. Rolling onto your back for spinal twist. Bring the right knee to your chest. Roll to the left. Hold the knee down with the left hand, and then take your right arm, reach up, and then out, and turn your head to follow. Now you can experiment with the right arm. You can bend the elbow more or less. You can shift it higher and higher and higher until it's almost overhead. or you can bring it down lower and lower and lower. You can adjust the shoulder blade, tucking it in more or letting it slide up or out. Take a breath, relax, and then try a big or small adjustment. If you're uncomfortable, make it a big adjustment. And if it feels almost perfect, then make it a tiny adjustment. And then take another deep breath and relax into the exhale. And then make another adjustment, even if you like where you are. Remember, the more you like where you are, the more subtle the adjustments become. You could also focus on your breathing or on the positioning of the pelvis or the legs. As long as you're very clear in your mind what you are focused on. And then every breath or two, adjust. Three or four breaths. One more breath. Switching sides. Come back to center. Bring the left knee into your chest. Roll to your right. Hold the knee down with the right hand. Turn your upper body back to the left. If you aren't sure what to play with, focus on your shoulder blade, or your arm, or all three. Four or five more breaths. When you're finished, come back to center, hug both knees, rock side to side. I'm going to make sure that your spine releases any remnants of the twist before you come into Shavasana. So if you need to stay here a little longer, take your time. And you feel like your back has released the memory of the twist, then coming into Shavasana. If your low back feels vulnerable, keep the knees bent, or better yet, put a bolster under your knees. And if you feel confident in straightening the legs out all the way, that's fine. Lift your head, look down the center line of the spine, and spread your feet evenly. Make sure your spine is even, and then your hands taken out to the side at an angle. Draw the shoulder blades together. Lengthen the back of your neck, keep your chin tucked, and lengthen the back of your neck as you lower your head to the floor. If you need to make any adjustment to be more comfortable, make it the smallest adjustment. Then turn your attention to your breathing. Slow the breath down. And breathing diaphragmatically. Let the chest become passive now. You can breathe into your back, into the pelvic floor, into the belly. Or let the chest become still. Relax your face, forehead, eyebrows, eyelids. Let the eyeballs drop towards the back of your head. Soften the space behind the eyeballs, the cheeks, the tip of the tongue, the belly of the tongue, the root of the tongue, all the way down the throat, through the chest into the belly, softening. Fingers, hands, arms, and shoulders. Feet, ankles, calves, knees, and thighs. Loosen hips, relax the buttocks. The low back, the belly, the kidneys, the ribs, the chest, the shoulders, the back of the neck, and soften the throat. Jaws, the lips, the tongue, the mouth, the face, temples soft and hollow, the scalp and the crown. Bring your attention to the breath, rising and falling. Allow the breath to be fluid, wave-like, slow. Now with each breath, let it be a little shorter than the previous breath or a little longer, but not the same. If you take a breath that felt perfect, then make a very small adjustment, a little faster, a little slower, and try again. Measure success not by how slow you breathe, but by how effective your breath is in helping you relax. Slow the breath down, speed the breath up, but always with the intention for this moment of relaxing the mind and the body. let the body pick the rhythm, and instead put your attention on the volume. Just notice how much air you breathe in, how much air you breathe out. And on the next breath, make it a little deeper or a little more shallow. Now letting go of any control. And just dropping in to Shavasana. Slowly, lazily begin to breathe deeper. Maybe even to yawn. And stretch. And pendiculate. Roll to one side. Push up to a comfortable seated position.
So you can use this idea of denying the status quo in any area of your life. What you need is to be clear on two things. One is the variable. What is it that you're going to adjust? But there's a second thing that you have to also be clear on, and that is what your goal is. Okay? Specificity of the goal. So for instance, in a stretching pose, I could have the goal of not hurting myself, or even better, I could have the goal of maximizing pleasure. Okay? Now once I have that goal, then I adjust the variable, pushing in, backing off. Okay? A worse goal would be to maximize how far I push into the pose. Okay? That's not a particularly good goal. That leads to tightening muscles, fascia, micro injuries and tears. So choosing a good goal, the right goal. And then you've got a variety of different variables you can play with: your breathing, your mind, stiffening or relaxing, shifting, lengthening. Pick a variable, play with it, but always asking yourself, how is it affecting my movement away or towards my goal? And the goal can be different. For instance, it could be comfort, it could be pleasure, it could be awareness. For instance, if I have an injury, my goal might be to figure out what's going on with my shoulder, and then I change the variables, trying to figure out what's happening in the shoulder joint as I'm doing that. Okay? So I'd like to thank you for joining me for today's practice. I hope you are doing well, and I look forward to seeing you again online, and even better in person at some point in the near future. Bring your hands together over the heart. Namaste.